Hello Internet and welcome to Saying Solved. For those of you who don't know what Saying Solved is, it's just a segment that I put together to inform people who don't know about sayings that they're interested in knowing about. Or did I say that right? A lot of times we heard phrases, you heard your mom say it, you heard your grandma say it, some old saying back from the 40s or the 50s, and an old phrase like, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And we'll be discussing that one too in a later show. Right now we're focusing on back to square one. Now back to square one I've heard often, and I know what it means. Everybody knows what it means. It means you have to start over. Everything you built was in vain and you have to go back. There are three different prospects as to where this originated. And one is kind of shady, which is the BBC commentary. In 1927, BBC Radio would broadcast their games and they would break the soccer field down into 8 hemispheres or 8 squares to give listeners a visual of what was happening. If a player had the ball and was kicking the ball and they were leaving square 4 and going to square 3, the listener would automatically know and have a visual that they were either on the right side of the field leaving or on the left side of the field coming. BBC issued a piece in January 2007 edition of Radio Times celebrating 80 years of BBC football commentary. And in that piece, John Murray, or Murray, however he pronounces that, states that BBC and the British radio was responsible for giving us the term back to square one. That's highly debatable considering the fact that John Murray also states that the grid system was dropped in the 1930s, but not before the phrase back to square one had entered every vocabulary. This confidence is despite the fact that although it could be true, it's all just conjecture. What is a fact is that BBC broadcast a more measurable view in the etymology series Balderdash and Pfeiffer in collaboration with OED in 2006. This questioned the fact that BBC commentary was the source of the phrase and that it was even in circulation in the 1930s. Number two. Many people report that the phrase derived from the game Snakes and Ladders. The earliest citation of the phrase in print is 1952 by the Economic Journal, which reads, and I paraphrase, "He has the problem of maintaining interest of the reader who is always being sent back to square one in an intellectual game of snakes and ladders." I hope I did that right. Despite that comment, there isn't a feature in Snakes and Ladders where a player is to be sent back to square one. So where did that come from? But for the phrase to have come from that source, people may have occasionally used it, but I'm not one to say that it originated from Snakes and Ladders. There's not enough evidence to prove that. Number 3, which is the one that I'm leaning mostly toward, and that's hopscotch. Most of us have seen kids, mostly girls, hopefully not guys, doing hopscotch, where you throw, I think it's a rock, and then you step with one foot, whether it's your left or the right, in one square. And that square is actually marked square one. There's 2 and 3, which follow in a brick-laid pattern. I'm not going to tell you how to play the game, and I don't know exactly the rules, so I can't explain to you the rules, but if you make a mistake, I do know that you have to be sent back to square one and start the game over, which makes it more difficult in some sort of way. Yeah, so my guess is that that phrase originated from hopscotch. Even if it's not etched in stone, I'm gonna stick with the hopscotch because it just makes more sense. Everybody's familiar with hopscotch, and if you're not, you probably live under a rock. It makes more sense to me that it came from hopscotch, so that's what we're gonna stick with today. Thanks for tuning in. Back to square one, Saying Solved.